Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. We have some amazing fight news. Geoff Neal versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. It's going to be the co-main event of a UFC Fight Night on January 14th, 2023. It's being reported that both fighters have verbally agreed to this fight. And I'm going to give you guys my reaction as well as an early prediction. And I am so excited for this welterweight matchup. Over the past few years, the welterweight division, and this happens in all divisions, but the welterweight division has been the worst offender. And that is guys making their way to the top 5, top 8 of the UFC rankings in their division, and then refusing to fight guys behind them. And you'll have a guy that's ranked maybe 10 to 15, and he'll complain for literally what seems like years that nobody ahead of him wants to fight him. And then eventually that very same fighter makes his way to the top 5, top 8 range of the rankings. And then he does the exact same thing. He refuses to fight people behind them. And I'm so glad that Geoff Neal is not one of these guys, because he's taking a massive challenge in Shavkat Rakhmonov. And he's risking his ranking here. He's risking his number 6 ranking fighting a number 10 guy, which I think this is how it should work. I mean, it shouldn't matter what ranking a guy is. A ranking is just for reference. It really doesn't matter. The UFC doesn't necessarily give the number 1 ranked guy in the division the title shot all the time. And I just believe that the UFC should be trying to make the best fights at all times. The fights that make the most sense, the fights that answer a lot of questions. If we have an up-and-coming guy who looks like an absolute killer, in this case, Shavkat Rakhmonov, we should see him tested against a known commodity like Geoff Neal. And I am so happy that this is finally happening, because you look at the rankings. Colby Covington's sitting at number 2. He doesn't even have a current win over a guy who's currently ranked in the top 10 of the division. And Colby has been notorious for turning down fights over the past few years. It's just been ridiculous. You have Wonderboy Thompson, who's sitting at number 7. I just did a whole video about him and Kevin Holland. He's basically refusing to fight anyone. If you wrestled in middle school, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson does not want to fight you. And I understand at a certain point in a fighter's career, they get older, they're not moving towards a title. But at the end of the day, you still need to test some of these up-and-coming guys. We need measuring sticks for these up-and-coming killers who, they look really good, but against lesser competition. Well, now we need to put them against some of these guys who, maybe have hung around for a while in the UFC, but they're not necessarily championship caliber. And a lot of these guys don't seem to want to do it. And you have Geoff Neal, who's looked better than ever in his last few fights. And, he's the highest ranked I believe he's ever been in his UFC career. And supposedly, I think he was aiming for a Gilbert Burns fight at one point in time. I think he was talking about him on Twitter. But he was definitely aiming for a fight above him in the rankings, which would have been like Bilal or Gilbert or Chimaev or Colby or Usman. I mean, obviously that's not going to happen. But instead, the UFC offers him Shavkat Rakhmonov, and he accepts the fight. So shout out to Geoff Neal. I cannot wait for this matchup. You look at Geoff Neal. I was very high on Geoff Neal early in his UFC career. Has a win over Bilal Muhammad, a TKO over Nico Price, a TKO win over Mike Perry. But then he got outclassed by Stephen Wonderboy Thompson back in December of 2020. And then he lost to Neil Magny in a competitive fight. But Geoff Neal had no sense of urgency in the Neil Magny fight. And he lost the fight. And he lost the decision to Neil Magny. But then he comes out, he fights a great fight against Santiago Ponzinibbio. This was a very close fight. It could have went either way, in my opinion. But he beat Santiago Ponzinibbio, and that was at UFC 269, December of last year. And then his most recent fight, August of this year, against Vicente Luque, goes out there and puts on the performance of a lifetime and KOs Vicente Luque in the 3rd round. And this was a masterclass performance by Geoff Neal. And Vicente Luque, he's not a guy that's in there to quit. And, Vicente Luque had some moments in this fight, but Geoff Neal was just lighting him up with that left hand. And I talk about this all the time, and I talk about this in relation to Charles Oliveira for as long as I've had the channel. One thing I look for a guy who I believe is going to be a future title contender or a future champion is the ability every time out, win or lose, they look like they've improved. And honestly, I kind of gave up on Geoff Neal. I was very high on him at one point in time. But after losing to Wonderboy Thompson, after losing to Neil Magny, I kind of gave up on him. I said, you know what? I don't think he's ever going to be a contender in the division, at least a top 5 contender. And I don't think he's ever going to be a champion. But after what he did against Vicente Luque, it's hard not to think that he has a decent chance against any of these guys in the top 5 of the division. And I know the division is a little bit logjam right now because Colby Covington is in witness protection. It seems like he's just refusing to fight anyone. And then you have Kamaru, who just lost the belt to Leon. They're going to run that trilogy back. And then you have Hamzat Chimaev, who may or may not stay in the weight class. But whoever wins this fight between Geoff Neal and Shavkat Rakhmonov is going to be in a very good spot in the division. Maybe one more fight, depending on how the division plays out, one fight away from a potential title shot. And you look at Geoff Neal, he's 32 years old. So he's either coming into his prime right now or he's in his prime. It's not like he's super old. It's not like he's super young and still learning. And every single time out, he's looked better. He's looked much improved. He's looking like he's dialing in his skill set. And I know a lot of people look at the name Shavkat Rakhmonov, and people keep saying, when Stephen Wonderboy Thompson was turning down the fight, they were saying, well, he doesn't want to fight a grappler. And don't get me wrong, Shavkat Rakhmonov is an elite level grappler, okay? But he's not a grappler, okay? He is a well-rounded fighter. Like, if you look at Shavkat and you say, what's his style? I would just say he's a great, well-rounded fighter. He's a very good striker. He has a crazy variety of attacks. He's super explosive. He has nasty power. He has good jiu-jitsu. He has good submission game. He has good wrestling. He has good clinch work. It's not like he's one of these Dagestanis, Merab Dvalishvili or Islam Makhachev or Habib Nurmagomedov. It's not like one of those guys who all they do is want to take you down and smash you. Shavkat is a dynamic striker as well. In his last fight, he went out there and, he lit up Neil Magny on the feet. He out-grappled him, and he eventually finished him via submission. The fight before that, he KO'd Carlston Harris. And I know a lot of people don't know who Carlston Harris is. He's a very good fighter with nasty power in his hands and has very good wrestling himself. And Shavkat went out there and finished him in the first round with a spinning hook kick. I mean, Shavkat is more than just a grappler. And I think that's why a lot of guys don't want to fight him. They look at these up-and-coming guys and they're like, whoa, I don't like my chances against him. I'd rather fight, one of these guys who's already ranked in the top 5, who's kind of getting older, and maybe I can catch them on their way out. And I'm just so tired of that thought process. So I'm really looking forward to this matchup. I'm happy it's being made because the welterweight division has been garbage the past few years with contenders refusing to fight other contenders. I mean, I know Jorge Masvidal's fallen out of the top 10 now. He's been an offender of this. Colby Covington, Wonderboy Thompson. I mean, the list goes on and on. At one point in time, the only person that was fighting anyone in the top 10 was Kamaru Usman. Everyone else was just refusing to fight each other. So I'm happy this fight is happening. I hope whoever wins this fight is in maybe a title eliminator in the next fight or maybe 2 fights away from a title shot. I hope they're in a good spot. As far as an early prediction, you look at their opponents in common, and, Shavkat dominated Neil Magny. Geoff Neal lost to Neil Magny, and that was recent. That was a recent loss to Neil Magny. That was only in May of 2021. But at the same time, I believe Geoff Neal is getting much better. He's kind of coming into his prime. He looked better than ever against Vicente Luque. And I feel like the Neil Magny loss, it was just more of a lack of urgency. It's just for whatever reason, he was refusing to throw. Neil Magny was peppering him with the jab. They were kind of even in the grappling exchanges. Neil Magny had some moments. Geoff Neal had some moments. As far as Shavkat has just looked flawless. And he's fought decent competition in the UFC. So this fight is really hard to pick because you have Shavkat, who's looked good, who's fought decent opponents. But by far, Geoff Neal is the best fighter he's ever fought. And Geoff Neal, who knows what type of Geoff Neal we're going to be looking at come January of 2023, because he's rapidly improving. He looked so good in that Vicente Luque fight. And I picked Vicente Luque to win. I thought for sure I'd given up on Geoff Neal at that point in time. I thought Vicente Luque is going to light him up on the feet. And Geoff Neal made, Vicente Luque look like he didn't even belong in the welterweight division. So maybe I missed that assessment, but I think Geoff Neal looks very good. I think Geoff Neal can win this fight because I think a lot of people are going to be picking Shavkat Rakhmonov. And I am going, for my early prediction, I am going Shavkat Rakhmonov. I just believe he's super well-rounded. He's going to have a height and reach advantage. I think this is going to be a gritty fight, though. I think Geoff Neal is going to have his moments. I think Shavkat is going to mix in the grappling, but I think there's going to be a lot of striking in this matchup as well. But I think Shavkat, if he can't win in the striking department, which I believe he can because I'm that confident in his striking ability, he's going to be, peppering him with the jab. I think he's going to be, kicking him at range. Shavkat is very good in the clinch as well. He has very good knees to the body. He has a nasty step-in knee, which he's used in multiple fights in the UFC alone. I just find it hard to believe that Geoff Neal's going to go out there and be able to clip him and put him out. I just don't see that happening. Geoff Neal has good power. His striking looks very good. We've never really seen him go out there and get taken down and controlled for an entire fight. Even in the Neal Magny fight where he lost some grappling exchanges, he was working his way back to his feet. You know, he wasn't getting dominated in the grappling exchanges. But Shavkat Rakhmonov, I just think the ability to put all these skill sets together for him is what's going to win him this fight. But I think this is going to be a very high-level competitive fight, and I think Shavkat Rakhmonov probably wins by decision, and I think he wins in all facets. I think Geoff Neal's going to have some moments. I think he's going to land that left hand a couple times, but I think at the end of the day, you know, the variety of attacks from Shavkat, the kicks of Shavkat, the threat of the takedown from Shavkat, and then on top of that, the submission ability of Shavkat. He has very good submissions, very good jiu-jitsu, and I just think put all that together, it's not a good recipe for Geoff Neal to be able to defeat him. And I think that Geoff Neal can win, but I think he's going to have to stay really busy and try to pressure Shavkat Rakhmonov, which is easier said than done. But I'm really looking forward to this fight. I actually like this fight much better than Kelvin Gastelum versus Nassourdine Imavov, which is the main event of this card. I would prefer Geoff Neal versus Shavkat Rakhmonov to be the main event. I would like this fight to be 5 rounds. That's the only thing I'm a little bit disappointed in, because I'd like to see how Shavkat's cardio holds up, because Geoff Neal, we've already seen him go 5 rounds. We've seen him in multiple main events. We've seen him go 5 rounds, you know, against, I think it was Wonderboy Thompson, and then I think there was one other fight, or maybe that was the only time he went 5 rounds, but we've seen him go 5 rounds before. We've seen Shavkat, he's only gone, you know, 2 rounds within the UFC. He's gone 3 rounds earlier in his career outside of the UFC. But, you know, I would like to see the cardio of Shavkat Rakhmonov, but I'm going with him for an early prediction. I think he wins by decision. I don't see him stopping Geoff Neal. I just see him putting all his skills together and defeating him via decision. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.